Hello and welcome to Miniature Realms, and welcome to another short video. I've been asked by quite a few people now about which brushes I use, which brushes I'd recommend, and I thought it's probably about time I just did a short video on my thoughts on brushes and what I use. I'm not going to say what's the best out there, because I think brushes are really individual to the painter, and that's really, really important. But I want to talk through a little bit about what I like about brushes, what I find important for me. That may not be what's suitable for you, but I can definitely show you what I use and how I look after them, and hopefully some of you will find that useful. To start off, over the years I've used an awful lot of different types of brushes, from the cheapest nylon things that you can find in the range, or Wilkinson's. These are UK shops, but you get the idea. From citadel brushes, which I've always found tend to be okay for a short period, but tend to go out of shape a little bit quicker than some others. I've not really used much of the latest ones apart from some of the dry brushes. I've used some army painter brushes. I found that the white handle ones weren't too bad, but again they haven't lasted as long for me as some of the slightly more expensive brushes when I started to pick those up. And then the prices of the slightly more expensive brushes actually are not so far ahead now of your top kind of army painter or citadel type ones for me any longer, for it to make it a much of a saving buying the cheaper ones. And I keep all my old brushes anyway for mixing paint, for applying oil paints or stippling on mud effects and things. So I tend to take quite a long time before I fully throw them away. Now let's just cover off some of the nicer brushes that I've used in the past but I don't have here. So the first and obvious one, and what comes up very as a very common thing, is your good old Winsor & Newton Series 7, which they say are the finest brushes available, I think. They are fantastic. I've heard some people have had some bad ones. I don't think I ever have, but I've not used them for a while. I found that the cost of the last time I bought them outweighed the performance versus some also very good brushes, so I stopped using them a little while ago. And then for quite a long time I used solely Rosemary & Co Series 33. Now Rosemary & Co is a UK company. They do send all around the world as far as I'm aware. I know some things have changed recently with shipping overseas, but I think they're fantastic, the Series 33. Now they are a brush making company. They make all kinds of different brushes. They're not just designed for miniatures, but the Series 33 are the ones that you would want to use with miniatures. They have short handles, etc. And they're fairly reasonable prices. You can see what's up on the screen there in pounds now. All of those brushes are under £5. And these were the staple of my painting up until the latest ones I used, and I would still recommend and go and buy these now. The only reason I'm not showing you any now is because all the ones I've got to the point where they are now for use for oils or splodging on effects and things. They've gone past that kind of useful stage for proper painting, and it wouldn't be a fair advert for them. But if you were looking for a fantastic brush at an affordable price, in fact in many ways I believe cheaper than Citadel brushes, this would be my #1 recommendation. So Rosemary & Co, fantastic customer services. I've only had problems with the brushes once. I sent them a picture and they sent me a replacement straight away. Really quick delivery as well. So Rosemary & Co Series 33 Kolinsky Sable brushes, absolutely fantastic. Now before we go on to the current regular set of brushes I use, I just wanted to kind of give a quick nod to artist Opus. So many people who have heard these, they popped up a couple of years ago. They're available through Element Games. They got a lot of very high profile painters backing them. I'm sure they were paid to do it or given lots of free brushes, but they use them in their painting videos extensively, and I don't believe that they would be using them if they were poor. So we're talking Angel Herrera's, that kind of a caliber of painter. Now I haven't used their standard Series S, which is the kind of the normal brushes, and I think if you buy a 4-box set, I think you're looking at £55. But what I did want to try, based on some of the videos that I saw of how they work, was the Series D, which is the dry brush set, which is what I've got in front of me here. Now, I've used makeup brushes for a number of years now for dry brushing, and they are really fantastic, especially if you get the kind of the not too soft ones, but a lot of sort of thick rounded brush, very much like these look like, funnily enough, and they are great, and I still pick them up. But I found that I was spending more and more money on them as well, so I maybe get a set. They tend to lose their bristles quite a lot, these makeup brushes, and they're not designed to be dipped into paint, they're designed to be dipped into powder and things like that. But they're still useful, but I found that I was wanting to buy more and more expensive ones, which is fine. They're still a lot cheaper than the other brushes I was buying, but I thought I'd give this system a go. So I picked these up. And then this is the standard Series D set. On their website, they're £59. I think I got them slightly cheaper at the time, directly from Element Games. And what you get is 4 round brushes, heavily bristled, very, very soft. And I've been using these now for 6 months, and this is the condition they're still in. The larger 2 are absolutely fantastic. In fact, the largest 3 are absolutely fantastic. The smaller one, I find that it's very, very small, and I don't get an awful lot of use out of it. Even in very, very small areas, I can't quite keep enough paint on it, but that's just a personal experience. But the large, the medium and the small have all been absolutely fantastic, and it produces a very high level of dry brush and very subtle. And basically their system is you have this little pot here, which you could obviously make yourselves, a little bit of sponge in there, and you dip the end, the wrong end of your paintbrush in clean water, drop it on so it's moist, moisten your bristles a little bit, dry it off. You dip in your paint, you take off most of your paint, just like you would do with any dry brushing on a rag or something like that. Test it on your hand, and then you dry brush on your miniature, holding as far back as you can on the brush. I'm not doing a painting at all here, so I'm just talking you through the process, but as far as you can, and your hand on the brush, and these brushes just produce a really, really nice fine level dry brush. And then you can reactivate the paint when it starts getting a bit dry, just slightly dampen, try again, and then back to the miniature. If you head over to Opus and look at some of the videos, they've got tutorials of doing it. It's absolutely fantastic, the quality that they can produce. Byron of Element Games and of Opus is just shows you what you can achieve doing dry brushing with the right tools. Now, a lot of those things, I won't lie, I think you can produce them with the right makeup brushes, but these have been a far better investment than I thought, and I was very, very skeptical based on the price. They won't be for everyone, but it might be worth trying getting a couple of fairly firm-ended makeup brushes first and sort of trying that kind of method and seeing if that dry brushing helps you. The box itself is lovely. Is it needed and does it add to the cost? Yes, probably. So maybe purchasing individual brushes is the way to go as well. You do get a very small pot of their own brush soap. For me, it's very, very similar to any other brush soap, but it's using the brush soap directly afterwards, and also using the same pot that you moisten your bristles in to clean. It really takes so much paint off, and I think that's also one of the biggest killers of dry brushes. Even if you wash them straight after, so much paint gets pushed down into the ferrule, and because these are densely packed bristles, they doesn't seem to push as far down, and they just seem to be surviving longer than any other dry brushes I've ever owned. So at that price they should do, but I've been very impressed with that. I was really concerned that I'd spend £50 odd and kill them within a month and regret spending the money, and I really don't. These are fantastic. So let's bring you on to my current brush of choice, and I've been using them for over a year now. Now, most of you will know I'm a commission painter, so I'm painting most days of the week. I do get a lot of hours out of them. Now, I appreciate there are people that aren't commission painters that also put in a lot of painting hours in as well. I think Dom on Boots on the Table paints more miniatures than I do, just for himself, even adding together all the things that I do for work, I think. But they definitely can take a workload. Now, they come in this nice little box. They're a little bit cheaper than your Artist Opus brushes. I think it's £45 for the set that I'm using there, and it comes with a 2, a 1, a 0 and a 3-0. And and I just really like them. They're very distinctive because of the lighter colour handles, but that's obviously not why I buy them. What I like about them is they keep their point very well, and they have a very good points even on the larger brushes, so that you can go a long way. When your brushes are brand new, you can be painting eyes with your 2. It's not about the size of the brush always. It's often about how well your point can be maintained. So when they're brand new, I find I do an awful lot more with the 2 and the 1, and maybe as they get a little bit older and that point starts to fade a little bit, that's when I might start using the naught and the naught 3. But they only really come out for eyes. I spend most of my time painting with the 2 and the 1, and you always want to use the largest brush you possibly can for the job that you're doing, because the larger the brush is, the larger the amount of bristles they have, and the more paint it can hold, and that very simply that stops it from drying on the brush. So you see these super tiny brushes sometimes with that almost looks like 1 or 2 bristles on for doing eyes. That's fantastic in terms of it being very small, but you've got to get that from the paint to the miniature before it dries, so that the more moisture you can hold in your brush, that I believe, and a lot of other painters believe, that the more chance of keeping that paint moist, so you can actually work with it on the miniature. So as you can see, now I've been using this for about 2 months now. I've kept the point very good, and the one I've used most is probably the 1. You can see the stuff's working off already, but if we have a look at the point on that, hopefully that's showing up on the video. I haven't really set it up to look at the points very well, but it's really very good. You might be able to see a little better there. And partly is they're very good brushes. The other side of that is just good brush care. So if there's a few things I do when I'm using my brushes, I try to keep my newer brushes only for non-metallic paints, and I will keep using an old set of brushes for as long as I can for metallics, as long as they're physically able to use them and they don't slow me down because they're not in good enough condition. So what I tend to do is when I buy a new set, the old ones are generally still usable because I don't wait to the point when I can't paint anymore, and then they get relegated to a secondary set. So this is the set beforehand, and this is a naught, and you can see that the point, I don't think it's still there anymore. Some people may disagree, depending on how you keep your brushes, but the point is nothing compared to the real sharpness of that, and that just happens over time, but that is more than good enough for doing metallic paint. So that's the first thing I do. I also try to look after them when they're on my table. So this came from Hobby Zone, came with a lot of the paint racking I have, and it's got little slots in. It just means that in between painting I can rest my brushes when they've not got the caps on them. It just keeps them from rolling onto the floor, getting knocked, getting pressed against something when you bend the bristles of your brushes. So that brings me on to more detailed brush care. So there's the obvious things like keeping your paint water clean if you can, using different paint water or changing your paint water after using metallic paints or something really messy. So if you've been doing some basing and there's sand mix within that, you don't want to be transferring that into your best brushes, because once you get sand in between the bristles, it's never really going to come out again. And if you've used a brush to apply sort of sand and glue to a base, you'll know no matter how much you wash it, there'll always be some grains left in there. The other thing, really basics to look after, as most people are well aware of, you don't want to get your paint below the bristles, so down into the ferrule, because if it starts going into the metal part there, the bristles will start falling out and they'll start splaying and you won't be able to achieve a point anymore. Other than that, washing your brush and using brush soap is the next most important thing. Now you can just use clean water and make a point off the end of each colour, and that really helps. But I also find if I'm doing a long painting session, I might want to do this in the middle of painting. I definitely always do this at the end, and that is using brush soap. So this stuff here is the Broken Toad conditioning brush soap. I picked it up when I last picked up my brushes because I needed some more brush soap. As far as I can tell, it is exactly the same, or works exactly the same as the brush soap that I showed you in the Artist Opus set. And before this, I was using the old workhorse, the Master's brush soap and the Master's brush cleanser and preserver that many of you may have or have seen before. And I'll pop a little image on the screen there now, and that's the current UK Amazon price. I haven't bought them in years because these pots of brush soap just last you absolutely years. I probably only had 2 pots of Masters in the last decade, and now I'm onto this, and this is huge. This was £4 or £5 from Broken Toad, and it's massive. I can't see how this is going to run out, to be honest with you. Probably be using this in 10 years time. So all you do, wet your brush slightly in clean water and just gently side on. You don't want to be too rough because you don't want to mess up the bristles on your brush. And just keep getting it wet and keep twisting it slightly, giving your brush a little clean. Now what you can do, if you're only using this stuff, you can actually just leave it on the bristles and then give your bristles a little sideways wipe, form a little point, and pop your cap back on. And then before you use it, I'm sure you all do the same thing, before you use a brush the next time, you're going to rinse it in your water anyway. So that's the first stage. And after that, I like to use this stuff now because it really helps keep the point even more. Now I only use this when I've finished painting for the day, or finished painting with a brush for a few hours or so. Now I'm going to pronounce this stuff wrong, so Arbitling 502 magic brush for brushes, magic gel for brushes. I can't remember how much this was. I found it on eBay, and it's no longer in my previous bought stuff anymore. They tend to get rid of that. So really dark blue stuff. It smells fantastic, and I mean that in a serious way. I love the smell of this stuff. Reminds me a little bit of 1980s hair gel, for those of you that are old enough. Now all I do is I dip my brush in. You got a big blob of blue on there, which you can't see because it's over the blue pot. And then again, I just use a cloth to form a point again. You could use your fingers to do it, but I find it easy just to twist slightly and form a point. And I'll leave it all in there. Yeah. I'll pop the cap on and I put it away. And then before I use it the next time, I'll rinse the brush first, and then make a point again, either on your mat or, like me, I'm a bit of a brush licker. So you do find out how good this stuff tastes if you're a brush licker. But I find those things absolutely fantastic. Now there is one more thing that I picked up at the same time. So it's from the same company, and this is Magic Potion for brushes. And now this stuff is rancid. You don't want to be drinking this stuff. You don't want to be licking your brush afterwards. Now as a brush licker, I've found this out many a time the next day after using these, because no matter how many times you rinse your brushes, there is a residue still there. Now God knows what it's done to me, but as soon as I taste it, I'm spitting it out immediately. But the idea is that you leave your brush in to soak for a little while. Now it's quite messy stuff, and you can't leave your brush just directly in, because not only will you bend your bristles on the bottom, but it does actually melt away the lacquer on your brush. So what I tend to do is use some clips. You can use a peg. There you go. You can just see how it's suspended in there without dropping down too far. And I've left them overnight and they've been fine, and it just helps get that real kind of grounding stuff. So when your brushes are a little bit older, I haven't used this on any of those newer brushes I've been showing you that I've been using for a couple of months. So this tends to be maybe sort of 4 or 5 months into a use, when I'm getting to the stage where I maybe want to replace them, or I've done a messy job and I just find that the paint's not coming out. Just try and give them a little bit more life with this stuff. I wouldn't say it was essential. The brush conditioning soap is, and I really would recommend the magic gel as well, but this is very much just a bit of an extra to try and make your brushes last a little bit longer. So there we go. Obviously not a definitive guide to brush care or what you should or shouldn't do, because it really is down to the individual, and you can get very good results out of some of the mid-range and cheaper brushes out there. I don't think that £45 for a set of the 4 Broken Toad is too bad at all, especially when you compare the prices of, say, the new Games Workshop brushes. And I believe personally that these are vastly superior to them, even though I haven't used them all in, in great detail. I think these are absolutely fantastic. But that's a personal thing. If you're happy with your brushes, you stick with those brushes. But I would definitely recommend using the brush soap and using the magic gel. I know you can use normal hair conditioner and things. I have tried it when I haven't had any of this stuff before, but I never found it quite as useful as the brush conditioning soap. Well, let me know in the comments what brushes you use yourself, anything you've found, anything you really like, anything you don't like. Do you use any cleaning things that I haven't sort of shown here? Anything you kind of swear by? I'd be really interested to hear what other people think on the subject. But thank you very much for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you all soon.